Hello, I'm John, and I'm making this video because, it's something I've known for a long time. I've been researching since back in the mid to late 90s. I, I've seen a lot of misinformation out there, things that people say in videos, a lot of YouTube stuff. And I thought I'd clear a few things up and give you a good reason to start tying your own flies, for that matter. To start with, fish don't see like humans see. So when you look at a fly, that's not what a fish is seeing. I'm going to start out with fish's vision and a little bit about their senses. And then I'm going to go into the environment and a few other things, and then the state of our fly tying materials and what we can do about it. And on my research, I've come quite a long ways. I kind of understand things quite a bit now. And it took me a while to realize what was going on with, in a fish's head. So let's start with fish. They don't have a cerebrum, so they can't think things out. They can't count. They're just reacting. They have a sense of smell that's tremendous, better than a bloodhound by far. And their hearing is good at certain frequencies. They're not going to hear you talking while you're in the boat, but if you stomp your feet, they're going to know exactly where you are because their lateral lines are almost like a sonar. But the important part I want to talk about is their vision. Now, we have 3 cones and some rods in our eyes. The rods are just black and white. Same with the fish. But they have, when they're born, they have 4 cones. Now, their cones, we have blue, green, and red cones. The fishes have blue, green, red, and an ultraviolet. Our blue and green cones and the fish's blue and green cones are in the same place. Now, when I say fish, I mean trout. And that's what I catch, that's what I fish for. And so it's any of the anhydrous, the salmon, the steelhead, the browns, the cutthroats. Rainbows are nothing but a landlocked steelhead. So everything applies here. Now, I do not know about char or brook trout, and I don't know, I do know that bass are different for sure, but for trout, 4 cones. Now, and that's when they're born. And that ultraviolet cone lasts for a little bit while they're very young. Once they start eating bugs, okay, in other words, at first they eat plankton, which the ultraviolet vision helps them tremendously at finding the plankton to eat. But once they start eating bugs, that cone slowly goes away, and by certainly by age 2, there's no UV light that they see anymore until they go back to the ocean. Now, the red cone is set towards the infrared from our human vision. So they actually do see infrared. Where our red vision is a deep, dark red, almost black, to a fish, that's a bright red. Now, in addition to that, the bugs they eat and stuff like that are full of a particular vitamin A, and that vitamin A is really the clue. It actually skews their vision to the infrared. And so that's important to remember. They do see infrared. Now, we're going to go the other direction. Let's say that fish swims out to the ocean. When it starts to get in the brackish or the salty type water, okay, the bugs they eat have a different vitamin A. And so that ultraviolet cone is going to come back and it's going to skew their vision further back to the ultraviolet. So, and that's important because that's the predominant light in salt water. It goes a long ways into the depth. Unlike fresh water, okay, so if we go back to fresh water, ultraviolet light goes maybe 2 to 4 inches because there's a bunch of little particulate matter in fresh water and it hits that, and because it's larger than the wavelength of that light, it kind of scatters it. It has to bounce. And so it goes about 2 to 4 inches. So when you get down deeper in fresh water, yeah, it's still there. It's like a, but it's not a collimated light anymore. And what happens is ultraviolet is probably not viable very deep, not past 35 feet for sure. And that seems to be the limit of infrared too. Water does absorb infrared. And so as you go down, you get down 35 feet and that infrared's gone. You'll find that bushes, I'm talking about their environment, stuff like this, the stuff that grows under the water, okay, needs infrared light to grow. That's why things grow to about 35 feet. And beyond that, you don't have plants growing. Now, moss, algae, small things and everything, they need ultraviolet light. Now, if I go back and I'm going to look up on the shore, and I'm going to look at the bushes around the shore, maybe the meadow, the grasses, and they all give off ultraviolet light. In fact, they all give off infrared light. Now, if I go out as a photographer and I'm going to shoot an infrared, the way a photographer adjusts his color balance on the camera is he takes a picture of grass and it will be almost white. There's so much infrared in it, and he'll adjust his color that way to make it, white and gray, and then it's got a pretty good indication of how to set his camera up for infrared shooting. So basically, anything that has photosynthesis gives off infrared. So it's something very, very important to look at. So all the stuff growing in the stream, and the algae and the moss and everything gives off infrared. We don't see it because we don't see infrared, but fish see it. They see it quite well. And so they have an infrared background to see things against. Now, when I found this out, I was pretty amazed. I was experimenting in the 90s with film cameras and finding out that certain aquatic insects they might look the same all the way around visually, but they were different. They were brighter on one side than the other. So that's something to keep in mind when you're tying your things like golden stoneflies and stuff. So anyway, studying this for a while, I started photographing the insects once we were able to digitally do that with digital cameras. Color infrared film was very tricky and very rough to do. So, but I had a digital camera that shot a black and white infrared picture, and I could take a color picture and combine that infrared with the color and get an approximation of what was there, what fish saw. Well, now there's something even better. There's a glass lens that you can put over your camera, and it imitates an infrared color film that's about the same spectrum of what the fish see. So that gives me a good indication of what fish see. The old method was pretty fair, but the newer method's a little better. But I will do a video eventually on how to do that so anybody can do it. It's not difficult. It does take some money. You got to buy a camera, and you got to buy some couple of filters, but it works, and that's the important thing. Now, I started photographing aquatic insects, and I'd pull them out of the water and I'd photograph them. And the interesting thing was every single one was high in infrared. Everything that was exposed to trout was high in infrared. Case caddis, just the thorax and head might be high in infrared, because if they lived in that case forever, you know. And my first thought was, wow, I just need to imitate the infrared for the fish to hit my fly, then it would be perfectly match the hatch, you know. Well, that's not the case. The match I want was not what I really wanted, because after a while you realize that the bugs are infrared, you know, by design. Some creator designed them with infrared so they could hide from their enemy, the fish. Really simple. If you tie with infrared, it's like putting a ghillie suit on your bug. If it sits still against the red infrared, against red infrared, they're almost hidden. They almost have no, you can't see them. You know, you ever go to seen YouTubes of guys that, you know, they hide in this ghillie suit and somebody walks by and they don't see them, they come back again, they move and people see them. Well, most of their bugs move down the stream and people see them. Okay, so once I realized that, I started looking back at all our old traditional flies that we used to tie to fish under the water. What did we use? Well, we used all natural materials. We used natural feathers. We used natural everything. We used muskrat. We used peacock. We used pheasant tail. And we start looking, hare's mask. Look at a hare's ear, red fox squirrel. Those flies, you know, a pheasant tail. Those flies are all today still excellent flies. Matter of fact, we started tying them in colors and dyeing the stuff. That makes it infrared. I'll tell you why in a minute. But then we had to put flash in it so fish could see it, you know, because it was hiding it. We were putting a ghillie suit on it. Now, the reason things go infrared is dyes are made from organic products. So get green, they grind up some leaves or grass or whatever to get that green. Any of the darker colors that we get from a dyed product are high in infrared because they're made from a product that's high in infrared. And you know, it's a simple thing to look at. So I I've spent quite a bit of time looking at materials and and working on ways to get around that. Now, here's the other end of it. Those bugs all come to the surface of the water, and I don't know what's happening right before or at the surface, but I got a good idea. It doesn't matter. Once they get to the surface and they leave the surface of the water, they have a different enemy, okay? And that enemy is birds. And if they were high in infrared at that point, they'd be a little black dot and be an easy target for the birds. So I was in Montana and I started, every morning I had a smorgasbord of bugs on the walls of this building there. And so I started photographing them and I couldn't find any infrared there. None. Zero. Zilch. And it's all started coming together for me, making sense. So one of the problems over the years was like blue-wing olives. I've been on some hatches where you go in there and they take blue-wing olive flies, fine. Other times they wouldn't take them. You go to Adams or a Pale Evening Dun or something like that, and they might take that. Sometimes they wouldn't. You were hola. And you try emergers, they just didn't work. Not like other hatches. And this kind of explains a lot of it to me because almost all our greens are very, very high in infrared. So recently I just tied up a few and I can't wait to hit a good hatch of betas or blue-wing olives, and I need to tie a few more, but it should be fun to see what happens. But there's ways around it. Now, another way to color things is by pigmentation. And pigments are different. They're made out of rocks and ground up chemicals and things like that. Not organic stuff, but more of natural stuff. Although, you know, you can take some of the rocks come from organic stuff, and if you grind them up, you may get a little bit like shale or something like that. But for the most part, you're pretty good. Don't have to worry if you use pigments. Well, where do you get pigments? Alcohol markers work good. Like a Sharpie. Nobody had a Sharpie wash off in the water. You know, they're permanent. There's some other manufacturers that may be even better because they have more selection of colors for you. But there's ways around this. I've had troubles with feathers, you know, acrylic inks, that's another possibility. And I've worked with those and I've been able to get some feathers taken care of, but I've got a couple ideas of things and that's for a later video. I also found that, you know, buying bleached things, you want them lighter and then you mark them up to your color. And I just recently bleached some beaver. I love it. It is fabulous for dry fly dubbing. I was able to obtain some bleached hare's ear mask. I'll probably get some squirrel skins and bleach them here coming up pretty soon. And I've got bleach stuff on order to take care to do this, and I'll give you, I won't hide anything. I'll give you all the formulas and what I do and how I do it, but it's too early yet. I don't have all that information. What I want to do is go to the computer now and pull some things up and show you some things so you can see this with your own eyes. So we'll do that and I'll be right back. In our first image here, I'm standing by a tree, and it's just a normal visual picture. But when I put on and I shoot it in infrared, it gives an entirely different picture. And that picture is, well, a lot of red around a stream, for sure, for fish. Not for humans, but for fish. And if I took a look at the stream itself, looking in the water, I can see there's plenty of red in there. And I've taken red out of this picture. As you can see by the bushes up above, I've taken a lot of red out of it. So the environment's red above the water and under the water for fish. So if I go a little bit further and I go ahead and start taking some insects out of the water, and the first one's an aquatic worm and a stonefly and a caddisfly. And these three bugs are right now in daylight, but here is how they look to a fish. And these are infrared. This is my old method, so they might not be quite as red as they actually are, but they're red like this to camouflage themselves under the water. So if we take another set of bugs here, we got a little case caddis on the left side and some caddis near the bottom, scud, and a couple of mayflies. But what's important is what happens. This is what the fish see. And so let me put all of these four up side by side, and we'll keep the fish vision on the right, human vision on the left, so you get an idea the difference that's going there. So when we imitate the bugs, we use dubbing. And so here's a couple of dubbing mixes that I've collection. I'm not going to say who they are or what they are, but they're just a couple, because it's not the manufacturer's fault. They use ground up leaves to make green. So if we take a look, and we're going to go in right there, that's what fish see. So you could see that our white are like Cahill or Hendrickson, and even the right next, on the right bottom side, right next to them's not too bad. But if you look, I'm going to put them side by side, and you look at the blacks and the greens and even grays, and see what happens to them. It's quite a change. So that's kind of important. And here's some package dubbing. I'm going to do the same thing. I'll put them up side by side with the others. And the infrared's on the right and the daylight's on the left. And I picked these because I thought they might come out pretty good, But you'll see there's slight differences in these. And these are colors that, I expected to be good, except for, the greens kind of went out on it. But anyway, that'll give you a real good idea of what's happening with dubbing. And moving on, I have a screen here. At the top is some Antron yarn. You could say, it looks pretty bleak. Look at that gray, what happened to it. But white's okay. The yellow's okay. The black, whoa, it really changed. But anyway, that'll give you an idea of what's happening here. Looking down below, there's an orange and a white parapost, and some dubbing tubing. That's tubing's okay except for when it gets dark, and the black becomes a bright red. So keeping this in mind, what we've seen with the dyes so far is green just goes red, brown goes red, black goes red, but yellow, orange, and red, they maybe get a little redder or a little brighter, and sometimes they don't even change. So if we could avoid, the green, let's say, well, I guess you couldn't do a blue-wing olive. So anyway, it looks pretty bleak, but let's move on to the next group, and we'll see a little relief. Let's start at the top. The tough skin. Well, that's pretty much the same all the way because it's Xeroxed, and that's pigments. That's not dyes. So pigments work. And then we're looking at our spools there, right next to them, the purple, that went crazy. But, that craziness might be good on a fly. It's not all bad. Dropping down to the threads, okay, black is crazy. White's okay, Some of the reds, they just get a little redder, a little more orangey maybe, because, so there's things that work there. So we're not out of materials. We have things we can use. And it's looking pretty bleak right now. But wait for a second here. Now I'm getting some natural feathers at the top. And the ones that aren't dyed are just fine. Nothing changed because they're natural. They're not synthetics. The naturals don't change. And we go down and look at some of these foam rubber and tubing. They're fine, but the crazy legs, something's happening there, but nothing we can't deal with. Okay, so that's actually a lot better than looking at the dubbing, that's for sure. And if we move over here, at the top is all natural feathers, and nothing's dyed except for that ostrich on the right-hand side. And you can see there's change. And then on the bottom left, look at that black goose biot. That's changed a lot. So, once again, natural's fine, but the dyed stuff, Now, you go down below, crystal flash. Hey, that looks pretty good. And I've also got a bunch of holographic flash and stuff, and that's all good too. So there's a lot of goodness here. And let me go a little further. We're going to go over here, and at the top is some natural fur. And there's some rabbit and all types of things there, and that's just fine. No problem with any of that. And then there's, beyond that, we got some hair, some deer hair. The only thing is the black is, it's gone crazy. But right next to it, the green, bad hell. So you never can tell. The light greens, the lime or very light green, were usually okay. Black, no. If it's dyed black, if we had a natural black, it would be just fine. So to sum it up, our problem areas are dyed materials, especially green, brown, and black. So, but all the natural stuff is available. And on top of that, like let's say you want to tie a hare's ear. If you go to the store and you buy a package of stuff, it may be synthetic that's dyed that color and it's going to be high in infrared. And a lot of flies are dead that way. But they put flash in them so the fish can see them and stuff. Because that infrared under the water just helps the fly to hide from the fish. It's like putting a ghillie suit on it. Even though it moves, you know, and the fish are going to eventually see it. So one of the solutions there is, well, if you look at the bottom picture, we have some bleached elk in there. That's fine. That is absolutely fine. You can bleach natural stuff, not that, but bleach it, and it works fine. So we have a big selection of things. I'm right now working on bleaching beaver for dry fly dubbing, and it works great. And then I can take a Sharpie or a marker and just mark it whatever color I want it, because that's pigments in the alcohol markers. So there's solutions. And the biggest thing you've got to know is if you have a little infrared on a fly here or there, fish aren't going to reject it. They do not reject a fly for something they see. They reject flies for something they don't see. Now, how often are they looking for color? Under the water, I don't think very often at all. But above the water, okay, that's where we start getting into some dicey situations. You know, like Cahill, anything like that, sulfur. Pale evening dun's fine. Pale morning dun, it's getting dicey. Adams works great. Blue wing olive, I fish blue wing olive hatches with an olive colored mayfly, and they work great some days. And I think that's other days they don't work. They don't work at all. And they won't take anything. And I think they're keen on color on those days. And we can get around that with an alcohol marker. It's simple. So anyway, the things to remember is fish key on certain things. The most important is your presentation. If you don't have a good presentation, you're not going to do any good. Number 2, 3, and 4, in probably equal amounts, are the size, the shape, and the brightness of your fly. And those 3 things are probably they can be tossed around back and forth. And the last thing is the color. So above the water, the bugs are not infrared at all, because it would make them easy prey for fish. For birds. So anyway, in your trout fishing, you got to think about this. I hope that you'll all like this video, maybe subscribe to it, and I'd really love it if you'd put in the comments what you'd like to see me do next on this. I'm working on bleaching and making your own dry fly dubbing. I can show you how to make other types of wet fly dubbing, and I could show you about photography, how you can work things out, what equipment you need if you want to do this on your own tying bench and check your materials. So with that, I say have a good fishing day. I hope you'll have some bent rods and catch lots of fish. And I hope this helps you catch them. We'll catch you down the line on the next video.